Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'm really fortunate to have two important people with me today. Ryan Bowersox has joined us from Just Food. She's been an integral, Just Food itself has been an integral community partner. And so she's going to share some perspectives. I could talk about community engaged learning all day long, but I think what's more important is that you all hear about it from the perspective of a community partner that we've worked with, as well as a student that we worked with. So go ahead, Emily, if you want to advance the slide. So today I'm just going to give a brief overview of the project that we collaborated on together, and then we'll move right into the perspectives of my community partner, Ryan Bowersox, and then a grad student that I had the fortune to be able to mentor over the last couple of years. He's going to provide his perspective of working on the project, and then we'll round it out with my perspective of community engaged learning. So just to give a little bit of context to the project, Emily, if you want to go ahead. The goal of this project that we worked with, it was actually a follow-up to an undergrad service learning project that we did, where we did several assessments of perceptions of food waste from restaurants, from community members, and also just looking at food insecurity and perceptions of that by working with several local pantries. And that data gave us something to work with. And so we were able to use that data to really understand that the next step that we needed to do was to work with restaurants in creating a toolkit for food waste reduction and food recovery efforts. And so you'll see on the next slide, we had a number of community partners that we worked with. And this was a service learning project that I did with my graduate students. It was a small group of grad students. Our primary partner in this was Just Food, especially Ryan Bowersox. She was absolutely instrumental. We learned so much from her over the course of the semester. My students and I were just thrilled to work with her. And then another one of our primary partners was, of course, local Lawrence restaurants. In order to develop the toolkit, we needed to understand from their perspective what it is they wanted to see. So there was a lot of collaboration, and along the way we developed other partnerships. We realized there was other partners that we needed to talk with when developing this toolkit. And so that's just kind of an overview of this project that we worked with Ryan and Jamie, who is my student who's going to share his perspective today. So with that, I want to move right into Ryan, and I want to welcome Ryan to today's presentation, and let her kind of take the reins. So our goal for today is really to provide those three perspectives of what it is to be like to engage in community engaged learning. So take it over, Ryan.
All right. Hi, everybody. I am Ryan Bowersox, she, her pronouns, and I'm the Director of Outreach and Marketing at Just Food. You know, I think Susan approached me, maybe it was probably like my fourth day working at Just Food for this project, but what really drew me to it is that I did come from the food service industry. So I think I brought some of that perspective to this project. So Emily, if you want to go to the next slide for me. All right, awesome. Okay, so when it comes to community partnerships, I mean, that is something that is just absolutely, it's necessary in a community that is as small as we are, with as large of a university as we have. So just to give you a little bit of background, my job here and responsibilities are cultivating and nourishing community partnerships. That's with the university, with local government, as well as other community agencies and businesses. I also do marketing and informational campaigning, as well as social media. And then I also try to distribute those marketing materials to as many agencies as we can, so that just every corner of the community, they know that we're here and that we're here for them, and that anyone can come to Just Food and get food. But another big part of my job is I do oversee all the food recovery efforts in our community. We in 2020, it was 80% of our food that we had on our shelves came from donations. So that's in-kind donations, food recovery donations, as well as food drives. So food recovery, redirecting food from landfills to the food bank, is such an important part of the work we do. And again, we're just such an unusual and very special kind of community, because again, we have this university and this enormous, amazing resource. We have this amazing community that really steps up, but we're also in an agricultural area. So it really makes no sense that we grow a lot of food here, but people are still hungry. So for Purposeful Plates, which is the project that we worked on together with Susan Harvey and her students, was basically a way to educate local businesses and restaurants on what they can donate, how they can donate, and then also just kind of identifying some gaps. Next slide, please. I have so much more experience than I did when we first started this project. Some things that I've learned and benefits of partnering with KU are definitely the access to data collection and tangible evidence to where food waste was happening. To get that type of data that Susan's students were able to get us it's very hard. It's very hard for our agencies. A lot of us are nonprofits, and that means that, really small staff running a lot with volunteers. So things like data collection and research are just always something that all agencies in our community always need more of. And let's see, the next question is, as a community organization, what are some overall benefits? And again, just like those resources to just better strengthen the KU and Lawrence community relationship. Sometimes that can feel extremely separate, but it's not. We all live here. Even if you're living here temporarily, you're living here now. So to do that type of good work is vital for us. Yeah, next slide. So some challenges that do pop up with partnering with KU on certain projects. Obviously, COVID is the biggest problem that we're all dealing with right now, but it really is deciding on, kind of altering it to fit the needs of each person that you're trying to get this information out to. Not every restaurant runs the same. Corporate restaurants versus local restaurants aren't the same. So when it comes to food recovery in general, even with grocery stores, right now we're talking about restaurants, but I do a lot of food recovery with grocery stores as well. You really have to tailor it to kind of every single business. So I think when we kind of went into this project, we thought we could just kind of give blanket materials to folks, and we quickly realized that that was just not going to be the thing. We could make an amazing binder, but just would people actually read it? Would they check out that resource? Again, keep in mind these businesses are paying those folks, so the longer they have to stay to read these resources or even gather up the food, that was an issue that we were finding. So I think the challenges with partnering with KU is maybe just creating those perspectives. And earlier the slide, I forgot, Cameron, what you had the two heads with the different thoughts, but that's really the way that you have to kind of approach these things. Is you can't be narrow-minded about the project that you want. And I know that when you have an idea and you're really passionate about it, you really just want to go for it. But it really is about kind of meeting the organizations or agencies in the community where they're at, because this is my job. This is what I get paid to do. And so I do have to prioritize the things I want to do. And that's the same for all of our staff members. That's the same for every agency in town. So even though it might be an amazing idea that might work amazing in a different type of community, that doesn't always mean it works here. So I think the challenge is to have students or whoever's working on these projects just be really open-minded and also doing some of their homework ahead of time. I can't say enough about folks who approach us and say, I checked out the Douglas County Health Plan and I saw that this is a area that you all are working on. How can we help? Or I looked at Food Policy Council's 10-year plan. I saw this. How can this help? If you kind of come out of left field with an idea, you really are going to run into issues of duplicative services in town, which is a huge, it's not a problem, but if it's already being done, you can obviously shift your attention to do something different and maybe help other folks, especially in light of COVID. I think our community has really shown up and shown what we can do to help others. But right now it's you can get a free meal every day of the week in Lawrence, which is amazing. But when you're thinking about service projects, it's like, should we do a hot meal, or does that already exist? So I think those are, I don't even want to call them challenges. I want to call them like opportunities with partnering with KU. Is kind of, because that's a huge, that's like going to be a big life lesson as you graduate or start this type of work in the community, that you really do have to go with the flow of what the community is already doing. And then I think the biggest hurdle that I've continuously run into, which is something that we talked extensively about with this project, is just making sure that whatever efforts are being done, that continues after that semester, that continues after that student has left or graduated and moved on, making it sustainable. So things, so really looking ahead, like what does this project look 6 months after I leave KU or after this class is over? And those, if you just keep that in mind, that can really help continue those things and have them, really live on in the community well after you've moved on. Or if you decide to stay in Lawrence and become a permanent resident, you get to see that in your community. So things like, looking those 6 months ahead, or handing the project off to an agency to then kind of house those efforts to have them continue are really important when you're kind of planning this out, is how is this going to continue after my time here. Next slide, please, Emily. This project was an enormous lesson for me. Like I said, I had just started at Just Food when we started this project. So not only did I learn a lot about community outreach, but also the partnership that we have with KU. Really, I mean, this kind of taught me a lot of groundwork on my job in general. But so not only did this teach me about the existing partnerships that Just Food has in the community, but also just kind of the limitations of the work, which is something that I've already touched on, is if we could execute every idea that is existing on KU's campus right now, of course, like that would be amazing. However, like I was saying earlier, just already doing your research to see what kind of work is being done in the community, and then being able to help either propel that work or to expand it or to bring a different idea, and seeing those gaps, that's really, I think, the biggest lesson. And that's something that I have implemented myself as the director of outreach. When I approach other agencies or educational institutions, I really try to do that research first to see, okay, well, where are they at? How can I meet them where they're at, so that we can address food insecurity, whether it's on campus or in that area or in that township in Douglas County. How do we get there? Again, I just want to hit on this one more time. No project is ever done. It just kind of evolves, especially this project kind of got wrapped up right when COVID hit. And then that had to alter a lot of things. So we have all this information, but I've at Just Food have really built on the work that we did for Purposeful Plates to then kind of tailor it to more of a COVID world, since this was more specific to restaurant food waste. It's like, okay, well, restaurants, I mean, what changed more than restaurants after COVID when it comes to businesses? So, doing that research, looking at the menus that they're doing, identifying restaurants that do family meals now or to-go bags, things like that. And then also, kind of even with adding Eat Street and Grubhub into these, a lot of people order things on apps and, never pick it up, or it ends up at the wrong store, and, kind of just identifying those. So again, I think the biggest lesson is like, there's no end date to any project. It keeps going, it always evolves, and you just have to change as the world changes and as our community changes and grows, and also as KU changes. So there's always value in looking back and just building on that. I think that's my last slide. Oh, sorry, no, it's not. Looking ahead, so I would tell organizations, I actually do have organizations and agencies reach out about partnering with KU quite a bit, because we do it a lot. And again, I just encourage projects to provide ongoing materials and to be housed in an agency after you've gone. Again, I've built on the Purposeful Plates project for food recovery to kind of tailor it more to what we're dealing with now. And then I'm also kind of preparing as our community is getting more vaccinated and as things are, hopefully start opening up, kind of looking forward and seeing like, okay, well, how can we bring up the food recovery conversation again, not only with restaurants, but with farmers and gardeners and grocery stores also. And then with KU faculty, again, just being aware of duplicative services in the community. It's just, I get like, so before COVID, it was 19,000 Douglas County residents were facing food insecurity. Because of COVID, it's 24,400. And that is, that is a significant number. We're only a community of about 120,000. So again, very significant number. So when people see that, everyone's like, well, let's feed them. And it's like, yes, you can feed them. How do we make them more self-sustaining if that's what they choose to do? Can we get them kitchen supplies to be able to cook these things? Can we get them education to learn how to cook certain items? We can have as many sweet potatoes on the shelves at Just Food. If you don't know how to cook them, they're kind of useless. So it's really about kind of expanding your idea about what hunger is. So if you have a student come to you like, I want to touch on the hunger issue, hunger affects everything. It really does. It affects all parts of your life. So you really, instead of just feeding people a hot meal, like really broaden that and expand it and just like really think outside of the box as far as like, yeah, I want to work on hunger, but like feeding them one meal doesn't, it helps, but how does that help them sustain that for the long run? Again, I would just steer people to Douglas County agencies. Susan, Harvey, you do a really great job of sending us folks. We actually have an intern starting today. So looking at Douglas County website, doing that research, having those resources, I think is just so vital when it comes to community engaged learning, because it's things that we're already working on. So the more help we get, the more excited we're going to be about that.
All right, thank you, Ryan. All right, I'm going to turn it over to my former master student who graduated in May, and he's going to give his perspective of what it was like working on the Purposeful Plates project with Ryan and our other community agencies.
All right, thank you guys all for being here. Dr. Harvey, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited that you reached out to me for this. But so I'm a former master student of Dr. Harvey's. Still stay in touch to this day. She's a very integral part of what I believe in, and what I do. And this project was a very integral part of myself in general. So next slide, please. So just my current role, I manage a fitness and nutrition program in Kansas City for a small professional school. So I work on curriculum and teach and perform administrative duties pertaining to community health mainly. But my main role with Dr. Harvey was being her assistant in this community-based participatory research. So doing a lot of the background on the food waste policy, Douglas County, initiatives, getting a good basis for that. I was able to attend meetings with stakeholders like Ryan and, the Douglas County Health Department and local restaurants. I was able to sit in on interviews with all different stakeholders, and then obviously being a part of the qualitative process and then presenting that data to them. So next slide, please, Emily. So just some of the benefits that I took away from that process. I really, I'm a relationship person, and I really enjoyed the interpersonal nature of it. It took a whole team effort. There was 3 of us grad students, Dr. Harvey, obviously Ryan, various members, various restaurant owners, general managers, and we all kind of came together and found, the best process for us. So just that ability to develop those relationships was really nice. I found it to be, compared to other research opportunities, just more integrated. I loved, I'm not from Lawrence. I was only in Lawrence for my graduate career. So just being able to get to know Lawrence, I think was really nice from, a research perspective, and stepping outside of KU's, boundaries and seeing, what does the Lawrence community need, I think was a really cool opportunity. Um, just being someone in community health, understanding what it takes to develop partnerships and the impact of those partnerships was a great benefit. And then Ryan hinted at this, but Dr. Harvey and I still talk about this project to this day, and I've been gone from KU for almost a year now. So, just where it's going, the implications with COVID, what we can do to improve it, those types of things. So, just because I'm gone from KU doesn't mean that this project's over for me, and I really enjoy that piece. Some challenges we experienced, schedules. Sometimes we had to reschedule interviews just because, someone was busy that day or they had something come up. You're dealing with a lot of different entities. So that can be kind of taxing. But overall, it's time consuming, but again, it's highly rewarding. The challenges definitely are worth what we, got out of it. And obviously this, on Dr. Harvey's end, this required a lot of networking. Her, like Ryan said, her standing in the community and how well she's recognized. So that was important. And then obviously getting that willingness to participate. I think Lawrence is very unique in the sense that, a lot of restaurants are interested in, these types of initiatives, but, getting more of your potentially like chain restaurants or chain grocery stores, I think could be a bigger challenge if you wanted to take this template to a different environment. So those were kind of the main challenges that I saw throughout the project. And next slide, please, Emily. Okay, thank you. Lessons learned. My biggest one was unexpected turns are a good thing. We sat down initially and we said, okay, toolkit, right? We're going to sit down and make a big packet with a bunch of words and we're going to hand it to restaurant owners. And then it was going to sit on a shelf and collect dust, right? If we never got the feedback that we did, we would have never developed something engaging, something, someone can just walk by and say, okay, I have a good understanding of where, this food waste product goes. I think that was really integral when we were listening to, the restaurant owners. They were never going to read a binder, and that would have been wasted grant money. So I think those unexpected turns can be a good thing. The immediate impact, I think, is huge. I think sometimes research, it can get lost in the shuffle, but when you see, when you're doing research in the community, you can see how it's impacting the people you've developed relationships with and the stakeholders you've been involved with, which is really nice. The communication piece is essential, especially when you're mediating between 3 different entities, like we were with the health department, Just Food, and the restaurants, and trying to find the best solution for all 3 of them. And then again, the team aspect, having an effective team. Dr. Harvey did a really good job of disseminating and making clear expectations for us. And it made the process go smoothly. And we had now we have a really good, clear vision of, where this is going. And then looking ahead, my final slide, just some advice for students. Really jump into the process. Even if you don't have a great qualitative background, take on the interviews, talk to stakeholders, be active. I think that's a really important piece of this project. Don't be afraid to ask questions to all parties. Obviously, I keep hinting on this, but relationship development, it's the bread and butter of community-based learning. And then overall, the time invested in this was so worth it for me. From all the transcribing to the interviews outside of class, everything came together and it really came out really nice. So just from a student perspective, that's the advice I would give. Advice for instructors, I would really promote this. It's very engaging for students. They can see their impact. They're representing KU, which is always nice, and those community members are seeing that. So I think those are some things to take into consideration. And then Dr. Harvey did a really good job of getting us involved throughout the whole process and taking ownership of the project. She wanted us to be involved in the background research, you know, in the policy, in the interviews, in the transcribing, and obviously in presenting. So that was a really important piece for me, you know, as from what I took away from the project. Make sure your expectations are clear to your students about what you expect from them. And then I think this was important, is stepping out of the researcher's mind. We tend to want to, right, sit in our bubbles, but going out into the community and finding out what they need is even more important, and meeting them halfway and finding a solution that works for everybody. So those are my general takeaways. And again, Dr. Harvey, thank you so much for letting me be a part of this.
All right, thanks, Jamie. Well, Jamie and Ryan just made my job a lot easier by giving my perspective on it. So I just want to touch very briefly on some of the same points that Ryan and Jamie just talked about. So go ahead, Emily. So again, I'm in the Department of Health, Sport, and Exercise Science. I oversee our community health undergraduate students. And then I also teach our graduate students in health education and psychology of physical activity. And I try to incorporate community engaged learning in all of my courses. And so moving on to the next slide, just to talk about some of the benefits. So Emily, you'll want to go ahead and click through all of these so that I can get it going. So one of the biggest things, I call it the boots on the ground for my students. Applied learning, you know, it's one thing to teach my students in the classroom what it means to collect data or to work with community members and you know, just kind of overcoming some hurdles. It's another thing for them to get their boots on the ground, to get their hands dirty, and to really interact with people within our community, and to understand from their perspective, and most importantly, to learn from them. I think my students gain so much more knowledge from working with our community partners than they could ever learn from me in the classroom. And so I think that's very important. The group collaboration is also something that I love to see. It grows. It doesn't start out, of course, right away at the beginning of the semester, but about a quarter of the way through the semester, as we get going on our projects and learning in the classroom, you know, to hear student groups get together and start talking about their projects, and just to hear the conversations that are going on. For me, you know, even the months that I spend planning out these projects and getting them going and thinking, gosh, it'd be so much easier just to not do these projects. When I hear the dialogue that's going on in the classroom, it makes everything so much more enriching. You know, and those community connections, we are community health students, my undergrad, you know, therefore they've got to get out in the community and understand, you know, what challenges community members are facing. And so, you know, a big thing that we've tackled, and we've been great working with, you know, we've been so fortunate working with Just Food, is you know, they are so open to these community collaborations. And so my students have learned a lot about diversity and food equity and marginalized populations. And that, you know, just by building a garden isn't going, as Ryan said, it's not going to solve the problem of ongoing hunger. So how to sustain projects long term. It also feeds into that relationship building among my students, and relationship building with my students, as well as that relationship that they're starting to build with community partners. As Ryan said, I've got an intern, a community health student that's starting at Just Food today, you know, and it's somebody that worked on a project a couple of years ago who got really invested and interested in learning more about how can we solve this problem of food insecurity in our community. And so that relationship building, it really connects my students with members within the community, and it gets them to problem solve and think through things, and then to work with the experts within the field, within our community, to grow and understand more. And you know, one of the most important pieces too is that these projects build on each other. So that our Purposeful Plates was built upon previous work that my undergraduate students had done in another class. And I'm sure as we get through COVID, we'll continue to work more on the Purposeful Plates project. As Ryan alluded to so very eloquently, this is the work never stops. It keeps going. As far as some of the challenges of community engaged learning, as I just mentioned, Emma, if you want to go ahead and click through the next slide, time is a big thing. For my assessment and evaluation class that starts in the spring, I start planning in October, and it does take up a chunk of time. And I have to look ahead from October. I have to look ahead. What does our end product look like in May? And a lot of times I'm juggling 5 or 6 projects, because these are group projects for my undergrad class, along with maybe another project for my grad students as well. And so it does take up a chunk of time. Establishment of trust. And I say that because if you think about Ryan and what she does, she's in the community, and I've met, and I think Kathleen Fitzpatrick, if you were able to listen to her earlier today, she alluded to this a little bit. It's not that there's distrust of academia, but there's a little bit of wariness of working with us. And so I've had to work to establish trust with my community partners. And that means meeting them where they're at, not just emails, but meeting face-to-face. That face-to-face interaction is so vital and so critical. And sometimes if that means meeting with a community member at 7 o'clock in the morning before they have to go to their job, I'll do that. Or if it's after hours. A lot of our work revolves around working with nonprofit agencies, and they are stretched thin. And so I've got to be able to build that trust and make them want to be able to collaborate and work with me and my students. I said as a benefit is a huge benefit is group collaboration. If any of you have ever done group work in your classroom, you can also know that group collaboration can be also a huge negative, starting out with students moan and groan. And so that has to be thoughtfully planned out as well. You have to overcome or have to really think through, how are you going to make students understand that they are accountable to themselves, to their grade in the class, to their other group members, and most importantly, to their community partner that they've been partnered with. There's a lot of accountability that goes into that. And so that takes strategic planning on our part as faculty members to make sure that we think about how are they going to stay accountable on all of those different levels. And finally, I'd just like to say, it's putting your nose to the grindstone as a faculty member, and planning this out, and how are you going to marry that process of what you're learning in the classroom and actually doing it within the community. So it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of time, and a lot of trust in that process as well. As far as lessons learned, this kind of builds off of what I've just talked about. So Emma, if you want to click through the next slide, start planning early. My advice to faculty members, if you're going to do this, start planning early. Make sure to be prepared to change and to adapt, not just to your plans throughout the semester, because you will hit roadblocks or challenges come up like COVID. And so you've got to be prepared to adapt and change. And it's stressful, but that's that's also part of the beauty of this, is problem solving about how you're going to adapt to challenges that come along the way. None of my service learning projects ever look the same. The process never looks the same, because I learn every semester of how I need to do things differently. Or if I have a different group of students, I need to adapt to what I know about those students, as well as the community partners that I work with as well. Of course, as I talked to you before, in previous slide, working to develop that trust with community partners. That's absolutely integral. I've got to earn their trust, and my students also have to earn their trust as well. And then finally, we just have to understand that it takes time for students to engage. But usually about that 4th week of the semester, I start hearing those conversations going in my classroom, and the momentum going, and the excitement. And so even though those first few weeks can be rough with students staring at you with blank stares, once it gets going, by the end of the semester, I'm just thrilled. I'm exhausted, but I'm thrilled at the output and the outcome that the energy that my students have. Finally, my advice for other faculty that might be thinking about incorporating service learning or in community engaged learning in their classroom, Emily, if you want to go ahead, click ahead, is just to seek out help. I would have never done this if I didn't know about the Center for Service Learning. They have wonderful staff. Jamela, Emily, Kate. Look, I've been doing this for several years. I still have questions. I still reach out to Emily. I still reach out to Jamela. I have Kate come to my classroom. We're constantly brainstorming about overcoming things. I talked with Emily over the summer about, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do service learning with COVID going on, but we were able to brainstorm possibilities. And if they can't directly, give me an answer, or we're running into some roadblocks, they connect me with somebody else within KU to help me out, or somebody even outside of our institution. And so that's been integral as well. There's just one more click here. For those of you that are just thinking, I don't know if I'm going to do this, all I can say is just do it. I hope what you heard today from my community partner, from Ryan, and from my student, Jamie, helps to set those wheels in motion about what it can ultimately do with community partners. Hopefully it's a win-win. That's the idea behind this. It's a win-win. It's a win for your students because they've learned the content in the classroom, and now they're picking it up and they're doing it out in their community. And hopefully it's a win for our community partners as well, that in the end, they have data, they have a tangible product, and we've got the wheels in motion to understand what those next steps could be. Because as Ryan said, we want it to be sustainable. This is not the end all be all. If we've invested all of this time and effort into it, it's got to be something sustainable and not just a one-shot problem solving that fixes things for a day and then we go back to normal. So my advice is, I hope I didn't scare anybody away by saying it does take time, it does take work, it takes effort, but in the end, the product that you get from your students and those relationships you've built with your community partners, it's completely worth it.